Hey, how's it going, man? I appreciate you taking some time out here today. How's things going?
Things are great. Things are great. Just got done my last fight camp, and I'm happy to get back to work. But good to take a little bit of time on the holidays too. So.
Yeah, I mean, very impressive, man. 5-0. I'm pretty sure all five fights came this year, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Oh yeah, no. So I actually started my pro career in pretty much mid May. So I
It's
yeah I know
insane.
yeah. So I had 5 professional fights in a 7 month span. It was a lot of work, and I had to develop a lot of new skills. Obviously I have a really great team behind me, but a lot of the fights I kind of helped set up myself, like through promoters and like networking and stuff. And so it was really special to I just had this obsessive goal in my mind, since February. Like my first fight got canceled in February. Unfortunately, I had an opponent pull out, and that was supposed to be my big pro debut. And I just remember how disappointed I was. And I remember by the time it reached about March, I remember thinking to myself, you're gonna get to 4-0, 5-0 by the end of the year. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but you're I kind of made this debt to myself. And yeah, it was the way I was able to make it happen, and then my team was able to help make it happen. It was really special. That's 5 pro wins in 7 months, man. So I don't know if that's been done before. I think John Jones did it or something like that. People saying so. Yeah, it was a really special, hectic but special last 7 months for sure.
Yeah, so like that's insane, right? Normally fighters are anywhere from 2 to 3 on a good year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
How are
Yeah.
you able to get in there, get out of there unscathed, stay healthy, and just kind of put in the work and not really have to go through the grind of a full fight camp and still be at your best.
Yeah, I mean it's tough because you always want to have that balance between you know, uh knowledge building, skill building, and fight camps. Like usually those two things are different, so it's hard to do both at the same time. And I know the level I want to get to, so I was like, if you know I need to be skill building as I'm getting better in these fights, as well. So that was kind of a hard component with it, but luckily I think what I ended up doing is just taking on a lot more private sessions. I do a lot more skill building sessions. I have my coach Matt Waggy, my coach Charles McCarthy. I do boxing with Billy Patton. I obviously have my brother Charles, and yeah, there's just a lot of people in American Combat Gym and MMA Science as well that help me with a lot of those things. But then one of the real things that really helped me develop was I'd say working on my the finishing ability, finish being able to really end fights, if I'm clearly better than the guy, and end it quickly, because I think that especially in pro ranks where elbows and you don't know what you can get hit with, uh it's important to end those fights early so you don't come out with injuries and things that could just take those extra couple weeks to recover from, and kind of slow down your fight camps or your the role that you're on. I think momentum is really big. So being able to learn to finish fights early, and that's kind of what Charles McCarthy teaches a lot. He's a nice guy and very smart guy, but he preaches a very kind of violent jujitsu. And so he really helped me with that. And so you look at my fights, I think all of them were under 2 minutes, and they were pretty much all because of my jujitsu finishing ability. I had a TKO in there as well, but I think if I'd really aimed for that, I probably would have submitted the kid as well. So I think that violent style of jujitsu I think has helped me a lot. And a lot of that is just through drilling and repetition. I have really great partners, this kid Chris and this my training partner Dimitri. We just drill for hours, and that's how you get to that. People say my transitions are really good, and that's pretty much why.
Were you always following in your brother's footsteps, Charles? Going in there from like a young age, knowing where he was, as a competitor. Were you kind of like following in his footsteps, and you know, kind of you like he's there, he's done it, and you're like, I want to be there too. How was that motivation for you to be kind of where you are?
Yeah, I mean, there's we definitely think in different ways, I think, but it, I think what more than he did, he never really was the reason I wanted to be a fighter. Even I think I used to do actually martial arts as a kid with my twin brother. before Charles got into MMA, because I think Charles got into it much, like he got into it I think when he was 21 or 22.
Oh
So
wow.
I did a little bit of martial arts, and like I come from a fighting family, like my dad's old school
Right.
like style boxer and stuff. But I always was I think with him getting to the UFC, especially when I was in college, it more like showed me like that it was a possibility. And so like I think having that like assurance in mind, like if you try hard, if you're like smart with this, like that's where you can get to, like having that in the back of your mind, because there's a lot of doubt that goes through you during fight camps, like through the entire training process, especially when you first start out, like, but having that, in the back of my mind that like someone like me, who looks like me, who has the same body frame that I do, has the same genetics that I do, like has been able to pull this off. It goes a long way. And of course, like he helps, a lot with my fight camps and stuff. But I don't know. The reasons are a little different though, I would say. Like, we definitely have that same like fighter mentality when we come out to fight, but like what really catapulted me from, having this as a dream, which like, I always in my mind, I don't know why I thought this way, and maybe it was partly from my family, maybe a little bit of Charles, but it was even before Charles kind of got to that level. Um, like even when I was in like sixth grade dodgeball or something, if someone got me out in gym class, I would be like, that kid has no idea. He just got out a future, professional, like undefeated fighter. So, you know what I mean? I don't know why I thought like that, but I just did. And I wasn't like an arrogant or cocky kid. I was pretty shy and like quiet. So I don't know like where I kind of got that from, but I just always had that like inner confidence that I don't know how, but I was going to be great. And like mixed martial arts always felt to me like the thing that, um, like was emblematic of all the virtues that I found meaningful, like courage, heart, determination, like creativity in some ways. And so what really catapulted me was um I was more of an academic. I did philosophy and creative writing in college and stuff, which was a little bit different, I think, than a lot of MMA fighters, and certainly different from a lot of people in my family, besides my twin brother. And so I went to a liberal arts college, and I did really well. I was like the only like junior in my entire school to be in the academic honor society. I ran the school newspaper. I did all this like very very academic stuff. I was like invited to do an honors thesis in philosophy. Um, but ultimately I got something called a Watson Fellowship, which they give out to 40 people in the country every year. And it's a very academic thing. It's like given out to, some of the best and brightest students. And it's a very rigorous process, like thousands of applicants. You only choose 40 people. Um,
Damn.
and mine was it's like similar to Rhodes Scholar but a little bit more exclusive. And so mine was on looking at mixed martial arts from a more philosophical perspective, which a lot of people at the time were like, there's no way that's going to get approved. But luckily, I'm a very good writer, and I interviewed well, and I think they really believed in my project. And as far as I'm aware, it's the only academic grant that's ever been given for an MMA based project. So uh,
Damn.
so yeah, I got a fully funded $30,000 grant to travel across the world for a year. I had to stay outside of the country, and so that's part of it, is like exploration of your internationally. And so I got 2 weeks of visitation from people. So obviously, like my brother went and visited me while I was in Cambodia and Thailand. But besides that, I
Damn.
was on my own for a full year. I went from being like seeing my twin brother every single day of my life to like I didn't see anybody for a year. And I lived in Cambodia doing this ancient martial art called Bokatau, Muay Thai in Thailand for 6 months, and then did Dutch kickboxing in the northern Netherlands and Friesland. And so that was like at that point, after I got done with that, and that was a lot more striking martial arts. Like obviously, I was a state champ wrestler in high school, and like I was captain of my rugby team, which were combat sports in a way. But like that, once I did that right after college, like I knew I'm like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like I won't be happy with my life if I don't give this like my absolute full effort. And so when I came back from that, that's when I moved down to South Florida, which is what I consider the mecca of MMA. And
Yep.
so, yep. So that's like, after that, I was like, all right, I feel like I figured out a lot about myself in terms of like how I wanted to try to like knowledge build and, stand out as a fighter. And, I don't think I like had as many skills maybe at that point, because it was kind of like I'd only kind of trained in each respective martial art. I hadn't tried to tie any of it together yet, which people kind of underestimate how hard that can be. But yeah, once I got down to South Florida and got with American Combat Gym and all the great coaches there, that they really started coming together, and they took me from being 0-0 to being the top amateur in the country within like 2.5 years. So
Yeah, man, it's impressive. Like just everything you said, that's not your typical MMA fighter, right? Most of
yeah,
them
no.
are just they're just coming in with their, they've been doing all their lives, right? But they most of them just kind of flow into, combat sports as they grow older. But you went the academic route. You found your love for, fighting kind of that way, and it's really impressive. And you had, like you said, you were the top amateur in the U.S. I believe you ended your amateur career 9-1, which is a crazy amount of amateur fights for a pro. And now you're 5-0. Like, what made you want to go the extensive amateur route before turning pro?
Well, I think yeah, I mean, I think as an amateur, I one of the things I noticed was like any time in the cage you get sort of amounts to like I feel like almost a month of training, like each round almost. Like in a way, just
Yeah.
because the knowledge you get like figure out what actually works and like what works for you and like the feel thing, like and the distancing, which is a huge part of striking now. Um, but yeah, no, I mean so that's why like I think Tapology has me as like 9-1. Like I ended up actually having like I think it was I was like 17, 17 or 18 fights. So yeah, so like some of those were kickboxing, but they were kickboxing in
Okay.
a cage, you know what I mean? And like they
Right.
kind of allowed clinching, so it was like similar, in a way. So yeah, I ended up I think yeah, I had like 17 or 18 amateur fights and I did pretty good. And it was pretty cool, some of my last fights too. I really went to challenge myself. I fought like a really tough kid from Guatemala and South Florida and West Palm, like, I think of April of last year. And then, I went to Beverly and I fought at the North Shore Music Theater, which was a very cool venue because that's like more of like a symphony like place. They don't normally host fights. So like I remember after the fight, I took a marker. They have this big wall of like playwrights and like musicians and stuff, and I was like, well, I just won here. I should be allowed to. And so I just marked my name. I don't know if I was allowed to do that, but yeah, there's those kind of things that I had. There were a lot of really special moments as an amateur, but yeah, I think it's just like then like again even like after that I kind of want to challenge myself to go to like sort of enemy territory and feel what that's like because I feel like a lot of being an amateur is about experiencing things that like will prepare you for the highest level. And so I wanted all that. That's why like I think my final amateur fight I went to Birmingham, Alabama, and I fought the number one amateur in Alabama and Louisiana, and I fought him in his home turf and beat him, and so that was like a crazy experience as well. So like I kind of wanted to feel that, like being able, like walking in and like getting booed and like, like walking in like MFing him and the ref comes up to me and he's like, "You swore 2 times already. You swear one more time, I'm gonna start deducting points from you." And I'm like, "All right, like this is stuff to know." You know what I mean? Like, so
For real? He was
yeah.
about to deduct points for
Oh no,
cursing?
yeah, that's what he said to me. I mean, I don't know if he was going to, but that's what he said. And I was like, I'm in Alabama, like manners over morals here. I'm just gonna like stop talking. I was like, yes, sir, yes, sir. So it's those kind of things where I'm just like, all right, like it's good to go to different places and experience those kind of things. And I think I see that a lot. Like so many people are so because it does mean a lot to people to be like, I'm a professional fighter, like I'm a pro athlete, like that. To get to that mark is big for people. So I get why they'd want to rush that. Like but for me, like my goals are really lofty. Like, and I know what I want to be able to do in the sport. I want to try to like again, the way I kind of view it as more academic, like change it to a more like like thinking about it more as pursuit of knowledge, in a way. And again, like I want to be emblematic of all the virtues that I like in MMA, which is like courage, heart, determination. And so to get to that point, you have to be the best. And so that's why I'm taking it. I'm like, I'm gonna either be the best I can possibly be. I'm not gonna like take any shortcuts with this, like, have only 4 amateur fights, just go pro to say I'm pro, and then, like, kind of just roll the dice there. I wanted to get to the highest level I can possibly get to. And that's why I'm trying to take even the pro fights so quickly, because I want to get experience. I know how quickly, through my brother Charles and, through some of my other coaches, like how quickly those sorts of ascents can happen. So, my brother says, my coaches, Charles McCarthy, Matt Waggy, they're like, by the time you get to the UFC or PFL or Bellator, wherever the you want to end up going, uh, you want to feel like when you get there, you could be a champion. By the time you get to that point. So like that's what I'm trying to pursue, and it's obviously a hard grind, but I feel like I chose that route because of the experience you need.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Not a lot of people go the way you're going, right? You're very articulate in your approach to things. You know, a lot of people, like you said, are rushing it. They want to get into the UFC 3-0, 4-0. Guess what happens? They're not ready. You know,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
out of there after their first two, three fights. Might not even, some of them don't even see a third fight after they go 0-2.
yeah,
You know, so now you're 5-0 in one whole calendar year, less than a calendar year,
yeah,
technically. You know,
yeah.
what are your expectations going into early 2025? Are you looking to get in the early quarter of the year, or are you kind of playing it as it goes?
I mean, I'm definitely looking to like fighting. I mean, because immediately I started thinking January, but I'm like, all right, like, like I think my like coaches and like even my family in a way was kind of like, can we just like for a quick second like digest some of it? And I get that too because I do understand like there I've been trying to combine the skill building and fight camps, and I think I've done a really good job of it. And honestly, my solution, I ended up, I did a lot more privates, but I was like, how do you, maintain the fight camps with the privates? And I figured out I just started training more, like more and more and more, which was like crazy because I was already on a really ridiculous pace. But yeah, so uh, I'm kind of laying low a little bit, I'd say, just for the holidays. But after that, like I'm going right back to it. Like I want to be fighting in February for sure. Maybe like early March would be the latest I would like feel okay with. But like I mean, in my mind, I was thinking February, maybe January if something like really spectacular showed up. But that's just where I'm at with it. I haven't really fully talked to my team about it yet, but that's just where my you hear it here first. So that's where I'm thinking. But we don't know. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm ready. I have the skills, and like obviously I've been trying to have some step ups. Like my the guy fought my third pro fight at Foxwoods, which is like the biggest I think resort casino in the entire like continent. I fought a guy with two pro wins, and right after he fought me, he like knocked somebody's orbital like broke clean in a bare knuckle fight. And um the last guy I fought had 8 pro wins. And so like I think a lot of people see this and they see that I like beat the guys in under 2 minutes and like, come on, when are you gonna have a step up in competition? And I completely understand that. Like at a certain point, like, but you have to understand these are pro fighters. Like anyone else in their state, they're gonna like demolish. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people don't realize the level of these fighters. Like they have my fight name is King of Monsters, and it's because I truly feel like when I go in there, I'm fighting like different monsters, like in a different. They're all like different kind of like categories of monster in a way. And so yeah, I'm gonna give myself a little time, but I'm I'm kind of pushing a little bit. And that's maybe again, maybe that's a little bit of a rush mentality, but I'll talk it over with my team a little bit.
So, are you looking to get into one of the bigger regional promotions out there? I know you work for, I think you fought for Combat. Got
Yeah.
the name of the Combat in
Yeah, yeah, no,
Boston.
yeah, no. There's I fought in a lot of different Boston ones. Like I fought in Combat FC
There you go.
twice for my pro shows, and then I fought in CES, which I love them as well. And even as an amateur, I fought in Combat Zone quite a bit, and
Combat Zone. Yeah.
yeah, fought yeah, no, and recently I fought in Donnybrook, which I honestly I like. That was like I loved that show too. I mean I never really knew there was even like up in Vermont that much, except for my sister Teresa lives up there, so she had told me, oh, you should fight in Vermont. I was like, yeah, yeah, Teresa, but I didn't know they threw pro shows. So like, and honestly, I went up there and I was really impressed by how like efficient it was, how like just sometimes I feel like you go to certain shows and they're very like maximum security, like all the
Yeah.
security people are very like, they're over the top with things. They just like sometimes I feel like flex muscles to like make life difficult because they see all the adrenaline from all the MMA fighters and like testosterone, I guess. I don't know what it is, but like this show, I feel like they were very methodical, but also like chill about things that like, they weren't like picking fights where there was no reason to. And I feel like they were, Rex Thompson and, Taylor Thompson were both very like welcoming to my family too, which I appreciated. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, what's the plan in 2025 and so on and so forth? How do you get signed by one of the major promotions in the UFC, PFL, win championships, so on and so forth. How do you see that plan playing out from 2025 on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. I think, I mean, there's a little bit of it has to do with like, networking and stuff. Obviously, I'm trying to, just uh, keep plugging away at like my focus. Like every day I wake up with, like a goal above my ceiling, like 5-0, a 6-0 is now what's going to be replaced to. But so I'm trying to keep it very like myopic. I'm like in my eyes, like if you win, like good things will happen. Like that's what you have to focus on right now. And like some of the other stuff, I'm not sure quite how I'm going to control. That's stuff where I'm going to have to, I've kind of been like managing myself a little bit. So like I think at this point, I'm going to have to start. Once I get to a couple more wins, like start like talking to my team a little bit more about like how we're gonna network into that side of things. But my brother has a really good relationship with a lot of those bigger promotions. So does my my coaches Matt Waggy and Charles McCarthy and stuff. Like I remember I went to the Game Bread fights and I talked to some of the people who run some of that. They're really interesting. I'm not sure that I want to do bare knuckle, but they know people from Island fights and that those sorts of things. So they're a pretty big promotion that I might step up to next. And yeah, I mean there's a lot of different avenues I can go. I will say, I've met Dana White before. I met him like I think a couple months ago. It was actually at the Boston Encore. It was unrelated to fighting. I actually was at my cousin's wedding, but I went up to him, and at the time, I think I was only 2-0, and he said, "Hey, man, get a couple more wins, maybe we'll get you on Contender." And I think, it was like, I shook his hand and everything, and my brother knows Dana White pretty well because Dana recognized him immediately and was like, "Yo, what are you doing here?" So it's one of those things where, like, I think. I'm really fortunate in that way because I'm surrounded by people who have like been in this sport for a really long time and have networked in that way. And so I think, the avenue right now is I think I'm gonna accrue maybe like, if I can, maybe 4 or 5 more wins if possible, as quick as possible, and then and see where I'm at with that. So I want to make sure my skill level is at the point too before we make that call as well. Um, yeah, so I think Contender series is an option. I think I would certainly take like a late notice thing on one of the biggest promotions if I could. I just want to make sure I'm at that point of level. And so right now, like with 5 wins where I'm at, I think I need to have probably at least 3 or 4 more before I would feel ready for something like that.
Yeah, a lot of these fighters are kind of getting lucky now that Contender Series is what it is now, right? We're going to
Yeah,
be on season 9, I believe, coming
yeah,
up next year.
yeah,
It gives a lot of fighters like you an opportunity to showcase their skills in front of Dana White and the matchmakers. And I think you would be like a perfect fit for that. I mean, there's
yeah.
guys that were going into Contender Series only at 3-0
Yeah,
or
I've seen that.
4-0.
Yeah, like
You know what
three.
I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen that. Yeah,
So, I mean, you already having five fights on your belt. You're 5-0 in just 7 months, and then you have all that extensive amateur experience. I mean, you are a prime candidate for the Contender Series, and it might not even take 4 fights, 4 more wins for you to get into that. I think it could also take just maybe one more spectacular win like you've been doing. I mean, six
yeah,
and 0, 6 first round finishes. You already have the Rosa name as well. Let's not forget
yeah,
that. That brings a lot of excitement because a lot of people know your brother and they already know the kind of fighter you're gonna be because if you're any half of those fighters your brother was, then they know they're gonna absolutely love you because you guys are a fighting family, like you
yeah,
said. You're bred to fight, you have the grit, you have the determination, and you guys bring excitement from bell to bell. And I think you'd be a perfect, fit for, what the UFC, entails. But, I'm looking forward to your journey and kind of where you go from here. You have, sky's the limit, man. 5-0, and you're still grinding, you're still going, and I don't think you're ever gonna stop, really.
yeah,
I've watched you for a very long time, and I was excited to kind of get you on here just to chat it up and see your journey and your way of thinking because your way of thinking is a lot different than any other fighter that I've ever talked to. So I think that's cool. and you got a lot of, you got a chip on your shoulder too. So I'm looking forward to see where you go next. Um, and I just want to close it out on this note. I was wondering if you have a message for your fans out there before that are looking and eagerly awaiting for you to jump back in there in your next fight.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I used to always like to say. Well, first of all, I'd like to promote to my family's charity, Chucky's Fight. We help like knock out substance abuse in the New England area, so that's a really important cause to me. Check it out if you can. But yeah, to my fans and stuff, just one thing I always like to, because to me the most surreal thing about any of this, like I go in the cage and that feels crazy. It feels surreal in those moments, but. But the most surreal thing to me is like when a kid comes up to me and is like, "Hey, can I have an autograph?" Or at my last fight at Donnybrook, a kid came up, I gave him like a signed card, and he just his face lit up, and that sort of thing to me is like, the fact that I'm that person now for somebody else, like, is an inspiration like that is really big. And so one thing I just want to tell, like, kids or anybody who's like watching me or who feels inspired by the things that I say, or if anything anybody connects with anything that I'm saying here, is just believe in yourself, because sometimes you might have a vision that's very like authentic to you, but not really fits the script of like what a lot of other people have done, or the way other people think, or their thought patterns, or things like that. And I think one of the best ways to stand out is to be your most authentic self, and that's why I do mixed martial arts. For a long time I felt like myself as an intellectual and my athletic sides were very consistent with each other, and nobody else really saw that. And so I feel like that's how I've made my mark in the sport, is bringing those two things together. And I think when that happens, there's like a natural thriving and fecundity that comes with that. And that's sort of what I'm about. And so yeah, just I would say, if you have a vision, believe in yourself, and believe in it, and nobody can take that away from you. So.